right, everybody, I'm Logan Alec. This is your stimulus update for Friday, May 22nd. So, if you saw my video yesterday, my second video yesterday, you know I told you that Treasury Secretary Mnuchin said in an interview with The Hill yesterday morning, he said, and I quote, "I think there is a strong likelihood we will need another bill." Okay? Now, just yesterday evening, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell echoed the Treasury Secretary's sentiments. He said, "I think there's a high likelihood that we'll do another rescue package. We're not quite ready to intelligently lay down the next step, but it's not too far off. We need to work smart here, help the people who are desperately in need, try to save as many jobs as possible, and begin to open up the states, which are decisions by the governors." Now, similar to the question I asked about Mnuchin's statement yesterday, are these statements by McConnell news or are they not news? Well, it's kind of both, right? It's kind of not news because we know that McConnell and Republicans are open to another stimulus package. We've been, just like we've been saying for weeks, right? We know they're open to another stimulus bill. It's just they're not open to another stimulus bill right now because they want to wait and see how the economy does as it reopens, right? And they're also opposed to a $3 trillion HEROES Act full of a Democratic wish list, which McConnell himself has called a parade of absurdities, okay? But they're not opposed to another stimulus in general, right? And we even know that McConnell is or would be agreeable to the Democratic trophy item of another relief bill of more funding to state and local governments if it's contingent on businesses in those states getting liability protection to prevent them from being sued by people who claim they got coronavirus, COVID-19, at their establishment. Okay, so we know that McConnell has been open, right, to another stimulus package. What I do think is interesting about this statement, and why it is kind of news, is that there's the similarities between what Mnuchin said and what McConnell said within just a few hours of each other. Mnuchin said, "I think there is a strong likelihood we will need another bill." McConnell said, "I think there's a high likelihood that we'll do another rescue package." And keep this in mind, McConnell also said there will be no space between the White House and Senate Republicans on the next bill. So he's saying, look, senators on this, me, McConnell, senators, where would Trump on this? That's what he's saying. So I don't know, just maybe reading between the lines here, and this is speculation. Mnuchin is an extension of the White House, right? He works for the president, he's on his cabinet. McConnell said there's no space between the White House and Senate Republicans on the next bill, right? No space between Trump and the Senate Republicans, including himself, on the next bill. Could they have heard something from on high about this? I don't know. That's all speculation. We did see that report. CNBC put it out last week. It's very vague. It just said anonymous sources say that the White House would not be opposed to a second round of stimulus checks, right? But more importantly, though, when is this going to happen, right? Senators are off for Memorial Day. Right, they're off now, right? And they're not going to be back till June 1st. There might be some pro forma sessions and whatnot next week, but that's not really anything that's going to happen there. So they're gone until June 1st, right? So when is this next relief bill actually going to happen? Well, I've seen some speculation, that it's going to happen by the 4th of July, right? And I think that's far enough in the future, right, that probably is a decent guess, you know what I mean? But, you got to look at the people who are saying this, right? So, U.S. Chamber of Commerce Executive Vice President Neil Bradley said, "We ought to be able to get a Phase 4 done by the 4th of July. Now, I think that's a little silly. This guy's a lobbyist, for crying out loud. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is not a government entity, okay? It's a lobbying group. And I think it's a little presumptuous of him to say, we ought to be able to get a Phase 4 bill done by the 4th of July. It's like, dude, who is we? You're not in Congress. Okay, you might have a heavy influence on Congress, and maybe you're trying to throw your weight around here. But, that guy, he doesn't really know. Now, could it be done by the 4th of July? Yes, that's far enough into the future that I think it could be. Okay, and this is on both Democrats and Republicans here. The HEROES Act, in my opinion, it wasn't put out in good faith. Democrats knew that there was no chance in heck that thing would pass. Okay? And of course, Republicans are in the wait and see mode. But come on, Republicans, you can't wait and see forever because the people are suffering, right? So they're both gonna, have to get their heads screwed on straight and come together and work together for the people. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later, but I do think the timeline will be set by the Republicans, right? But they can't wait and see forever. But I hope as more data comes out, right? In the weeks by that point, after which they've said we got to wait and see. Well, how long you got to wait, right? So I hope the more data will come out to help inform their decision, right? The data doesn't look good. Maybe that'll light a fire in the Republicans' butts, right? The data's looking promising. Maybe it won't. On that point, yesterday, White House this is just this morning. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said that he expects unemployment numbers to improve in June. Okay, and we know that unemployment is going to be a huge fight in the Senate when it comes to another round of relief bills, because we know the Democrats want to extend that extra $600 a week all the way into early next year. We know the Republicans are like, that's going to disincentivize people from going back to work, which is what we want, right? So we know that's going to be a huge fight in the Senate. And, you got to look at what this guy says, but you got to remember, just because states are lifting up restrictions, right, just because maybe lockdown orders are being rescinded, that doesn't mean that people are going to be flocking back to these businesses like they used to, right? I did a poll in the channel this morning on this point because I want your all opinion. I asked you, let's say all lockdown restrictions were magically lifted today. Would you be comfortable going out to eat at your favorite restaurant with indoor seating only? Assume that the restaurant is complying with all current public health recommendations, tables 6 feet apart, social distancing enforced, reduced seating capacity and all that, right? And let's assume that someone gave you the time and money to do this. Would you be comfortable going out to eat at a restaurant with indoor seating today, right? Because that's the key here. Businesses can reopen all they want, right? But if the customers aren't coming back in, unemployment's not going to go down, right? Because businesses aren't going to keep people on staff if no one's coming through their doors, right? So there's kind of two components here. And sometimes, honestly, I think Republicans can be just a bit more focused on the one component, which is just the reopening, and forget about, there's this very real fear still out there of coronavirus, right? And there's also the aspect, hey, do people even have money to go shop at businesses these days, right? With this all said, Donald Trump, okay, is doubling down on his desire to reopen the country. He said yesterday at that Ford plant in Michigan, he was asked about the possibility of a second coronavirus wave. And he basically said, even if there's a second coronavirus wave, the country will not shut down again. Okay? And I think he has the November elections in mind. All right? Let me tell you exactly what he said. People say that's a very distinct possibility, referring to a second coronavirus wave. And we're going to put out the fires, but we're not going to close the country. We're going to put out the flame, whether it's an ember or a flame, we're going to put it out, but we're not closing our country. Okay? He said the country wasn't meant to be shut down. So, this is a pretty strong statement. He's saying, hey, even if there's another coronavirus wave, we're not shutting down the country, right? Because remember what he wants to lead up to the election with. He's talking about this transition to greatness. Right? He said Q3 is going to be a transition period, but Q4, that's when the greatness is going to start to shine. 2021, that's when the greatness is really going to come. Maybe that's a rosy picture, but that's going to be a selling point for the election, right? At least that's the strategy right now. I've heard some people ask, well, maybe Trump just wants to buy votes, right, in November by giving people $2,000 a month, right? I don't think that's realistic. As I've said before, the Democrats would get credit for that because that's been their idea, right? And secondly, just by Trump's statements, right, he wants a selling point to be, hey, and the Republicans took you through this dark time when we got the economy roaring again. Okay, that's going to be, I think, what he wants to go into the November election season with. Now, let's just talk a little bit about his mask, right? Because that's what the drama is all about on the media. So apparently, Trump did wear a mask for a portion of his visit to the Ford Rassonville Components plant in Michigan. Okay. But he didn't wear the mask for other parts of his visit, especially the more public aspects of his visit. And when asked why, he said he didn't want to give the press the pleasure of seeing it. Okay, and the Michigan Attorney General just went crazy on this. She called Trump a petulant child who refuses to follow the rules, and I have to say, this is no joke. The president, of course, got on the Twitter and he blasted her. He said the do-nothing Attorney General of the great state of Michigan, Dana Nessel, should not be taking her anger and stupidity out on Ford Motor. They might get upset with you and leave the state like so many other companies have until I came along and brought business back to Michigan. So, this is just kind of signaling, right? I think Trump just wants to be seen without the mask, right? Kind of signaling to the country, hey, it's okay, things are back to normal, even though, let's be honest, it's not, right? People are still very scared, and there's still a virus going around, okay? But I think that's the positioning that he wants to give right now. That being said, the Surgeon General, who works for Trump, keep that in mind, you know, he admitted that that a country reopening is not without risk, well, obviously, but he also did say that this country is better prepared to reopen and has more tools to fight the virus now than it did in as little as a few weeks ago. Okay, so take that as you will. So the Senate is out for Memorial Day right now, but like I told you yesterday, there was a bill put forward by Amy Klobuchar and Jerry Moran called the Protecting Seniors from Emergency Scams Act, right? Its goal is to basically rope in the Federal Trade Commission to basically give a list of all the scams targeting seniors around coronavirus right now. So I think it's a good piece of legislation. I made a video about it yesterday. I also made a video yesterday about how Andrew Yang wants to give you $250. He has this nonprofit called Humanity Forward. CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, recently donated $5 million to this to give 250 grants to almost 20,000 people. So I showed you how to apply for that yesterday. Please only apply if you really need it. You know, I mean, if you don't really need it right now, if $250 wouldn't really help you out that much right now, really wouldn't matter, don't do it. Save it for the people who really need it right now, the people who really desperately need any kind of stimulus they can get right now. All right. So that is my update for today. I'm going to continue to keep an eye on what's going on in Washington and elsewhere, and I'll let you know if I see anything. All right. Bye-bye.